I've made several videos where I highlight the difficulty that UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has had in his first just over a year in post. It's been no secret that Labour members and parliamentarians have not all been super excited about their leader and the direction of the government. And they're not alone. Voters are pretty pissed off as well. Polls suggest that if another election were held tomorrow, Labour would lose to Nigel Farage's Reform UK party. Up until recently, talk that Starmer would be replaced eminently was for the birds. But these past 2 or so weeks have seen a series of massive blows to the government and reporting of a quiet coup gathering momentum. So in this video, I will take you through a quick overview of how Starmer got here, the protocol for replacing a leader of the Labour Party, the coup that seems to be in the works, and what comes next. And so without any further ado, let's get started with some background. Keir Starmer took over the Labour Party in 2020 following the party's worst performance in over 80 years at the 2019 general election. Following about 5 years of leadership by Jeremy Corbyn, who took the party to the ideological left, Starmer quickly started moving the Labour Party towards the middle. He led the Labour Party to a landslide election victory last year in 2024. However, although Labour won a massive amount of seats, they didn't actually win very many votes, winning less than 34%. But with Conservative voters seeking either rightwards to Reform UK or towards the middle with the Liberal Democrats, 34% was enough for a Labour landslide. And so Starmer became Prime Minister. And that's when it all started falling apart. Within weeks of taking office, he and other members of his government were embroiled in the Freebies Scandal. Very early into Starmer's premiership, stories about how a prominent Labour Party donor, Lord Ali, had gifted Starmer, his wife, Deputy Leader Angela Rayner, and Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson a vast amount of expensive gifts of mostly clothing but also accommodation started hitting the spotlight. This became especially problematic when Lord Ali was given unrestricted access to 10 Downing Street in the early days of Starmer's premiership. Another semi-adjacent scandal erupted over Taylor Swift, with many prominent Labour politicians, namely Starmer, Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy, Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, Health Secretary Wes Streeting, and Phillipson again, were given free tickets to a concert where Swift received unprecedented top-level security escort by the Met Police. This was all a little bit awkward, because at the same time as all of this came the winter fuel fiasco. Since 1997, all UK pensioners have received a universal winter payment to assist with the cost of heating homes. But then, to plug a gap in public finances, the Starmer government, as one of its first big announcements in power, would make this payment means-tested, meaning only pensioners on low incomes would qualify. This meant that around 10 million Brits would lose this payment, which by then was worth either £200 or £300 depending on age. And this caused massive backlash, with headline after headline and comment after comment about grannies freezing in their homes. This began what was seen as the downwards trend of Labour in the polls. And the decision seems to have been so unpopular that in the summer of 2025, it was rolled back and winter fuel payments were again made universal. This isn't the first rollback, because this year also saw the PIP fiasco. Chancellor Rachel Reeves has been given an unenviable fiscal situation, needing to plug a massive budget deficit gap that keeps growing while allowing massive increases to defense spending. So in the summer of 2025, to plug part of this gap, Starmer and Reeves tried to push through legislation that would make it more difficult to qualify for PIP, or personal independence payments, which are given to people with disabilities. But his own party protested, and it became clear that Starmer and Reeves didn't have the votes. So they rolled back the vast majority of the legislation, with the fiscal black hole remaining. This on the same day that Rachel Reeves was seen crying on the front benches in Parliament, added to the sense of a government in serious crisis. And then came the past 2 weeks and the Rayner Mandelson exits. Days after Starmer had performed a mini reshuffle of a few staffers and ministers in his and Reeves's office, he was forced into another reshuffle when his Deputy Prime Minister and Housing Secretary, Angela Rayner, was forced to resign from government. This after a scandal broke out over her failing to pay the appropriate amount of stamp duty when purchasing a new property. For the details of that case, check out this video. Then last week, Starmer was left with no other option than to fire his ambassador to the US, Peter Mandelson, mere days before a massively important state visit by President Donald Trump to the UK. This due to emerging details of Mandelson's relation with Jeffrey Epstein. Mandelson had written to Epstein that he was his best pal, and after Epstein's first conviction of soliciting a minor, that he still stays with him and loves him. This scandal raised questions about how much Starmer knew when he appointed Mandelson, and why it took him several days of the new details emerging before he fired him. All these troubles and more have led many to ask how long Starmer will last. So let's first consider how a Labour Party leader can be replaced and look at leadership challenge procedure. There is a series of ways in which the Labour Party can gently nudge their leader to resign, but there is only one way that they can firmly depose of him. So let's start with the nudging tactics. The first way to nudge a leader to resign is through resignations. If the cabinet or junior ministers are unhappy with the party leader, they can resign from government or shadow government if the party is in opposition. This happened in 2016 when the vast majority of Jeremy Corbyn's shadow government resigned after their displeasure of his leadership during the Brexit referendum. But cabinet members can be replaced, and that's exactly what Corbyn did. And Starmer could do the same, especially considering how many Labour MPs there are in Parliament right now, who I'm very sure are dying to be given frontbench roles. The other nudge comes in the form of a confidence vote within the Parliamentary Labour Party, or the PLP. This could be tabled by an MP and taken to a vote by the chair of the PLP, currently Jessica Morden. Again, this also happened in 2016 when 80% of the PLP voted against Jeremy Corbyn when Margaret Hodge filed this motion. But again, Corbyn just decided to ignore this vote and went on to serve as leader for another couple of years. Starmer's nature would probably make it more difficult for him to ignore a vote like this. But in his favour, he has the fact that a lot of the PLP's current composition is made in his image. In other words, he got a lot of moderates elected last year who will probably continue supporting him. So then there is the final mechanism to get rid of a leader. And this is what Starmer should probably fear the most: a leadership challenge. If another MP can secure support from 20% of current Labour MPs, well, then they can instigate a leadership challenge of the incumbent, which will be taken to Labour Party members. And this is where Starmer is in the most danger, because that's what's being discussed in the current coup plans. Over last weekend, several papers caught whiff of a coup that is quietly in the works amongst some prominent Labour figures trying to replace Keir Starmer with Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham. Burnham is a former MP and cabinet minister who served in several high-profile roles under Prime Minister Gordon Brown. He stood for party leader twice before, in 2010 when he came in 4th place, losing to Ed Miliband, and in 2015 when he came in a distant 2nd place to Jeremy Corbyn. In 2017, he traded Westminster for the Greater Manchester mayoralty, where he has become very popular for his soft left ideological position and pragmatic professional approach. He's supercharged the Manchester economy and massively upgraded transportation links. And opinion polls suggest he is far and away the Labour politician with the highest net approval rating. So it's no great surprise that people want him to replace Starmer. There's just a couple pretty big difficulties. Firstly, he's not an MP, and he has to be an MP to challenge Starmer. So central to this coup plan is forcing a by-election in Manchester that Burnham could stand in and win. And there already seems to have been found a seat: Gorton and Denton, where the current MP, Andrew Gwynn, was suspended from the Labour Party due to inappropriate WhatsApp messages, and he's been off sick since this suspension. Word has it he's contemplating an exit independently of Burnham's leadership ambition. But if Gwynn resigns, well, Starmer and his team may try to prevent Burnham from standing. But sources, however, suggest that Burnham would win this challenge due to his popularity with the party grassroots, and especially in Manchester. So then let's say Burnham gets into Parliament and starts gathering endorsements to challenge Starmer. Well, he then runs into the second challenge: Starmer's infrastructure and incumbency advantage. But fret not, because work is already being done on building what looks like a leadership bid by Burnham. This comes in a lot of forms, but the most prominent is called Mainstream, which is a campaign group within the party, which was launched just last week by, you guessed it, Andy Burnham. Right now it's a campaign group, but these have quickly turned into leadership bid campaigns before. This is exactly what happened with Labour Together, a campaign group set up by Morgan McSweeney during the Corbyn years, and which was used very successfully to run Starmer's leadership bid in 2020 and to remake the Labour Party in its image. mainstream has members from a rather broad base of Labour, including moderates from the Blair years, as well as left-wingers close to Corbyn. And Burnham is already fighting what is looking more and more like a proxy leadership contest with Starmer in the current deputy leadership contest that's come about from Rayner's resignation. And that's because Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson is very much the current government's chosen candidate. She's close to Starmer, very involved with policy development, and relatively moderate, while the other candidate, Lucy Powell, is a fellow Mancunian who is seen as part of the same soft left Labour Party as Burnham. And while she's more or less been endorsed by Burnham, she's not on the best of terms with Starmer after he fired her from her cabinet role in the reshuffle just 2 weeks ago. And while Powell has stated she isn't running a proxy campaign, the way that Labour Party members vote in this contest will speak to the way that they view the current party leadership, as well as the way that they view the soft left approach of Powell and Burnham. And so it will be an early test for Burnham. So let's quickly look forward to what's next. Starmer isn't on the way out over the next couple of weeks. There's a Labour Party conference at the end of the month, and while it's not expected to be jubilant, it's also not expected to be chaotic. He's also not on the way out over the next couple of months. At least I doubt it, because it's still only just over a year since he took office. Surely he'll be given a little bit longer, especially because the most serious contender to replace him isn't even in Parliament yet. But what could happen is that Burnham becomes more clear in his intention to join Parliament. Then, after local and devolved elections of May next year, an opening could present itself to him. And that's because Labour could lose power in Wales and again fail to defeat the SNP in Scotland at the same time as losing councillors up and down England. That's when Starmer should start to worry. But what do you think? Do you think that Starmer is on his way out? And do you think that Burnham is the best placed candidate to replace him? Or do you see someone else doing that? And I've been considering making a video going in depth with the Labour Party deputy leadership contest. I was wondering, is that something that you'd like to see? Well, let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.